Good morning. Hello. Happy Friday. We are here. We are back for another Friday live stream. Today, we are going to be talking about reading comprehension and all of those good things. I'm just setting up my monitor so I can see some comments. And we are going to get right into it. By the way, I'm Terrell, and this is Absolutely Studying. I bootstrapped my way through university, and now I want to save you some of the hassle that I went through. So I do talk here on this channel about all things homework, studying, getting organized, and just trying to live the best student life possible. So today we're going to be talking about reading comprehension. I'm going to pull up an article that I wrote. And so we're gonna jump right into that. After that, we're gonna talk about some goal setting. We're gonna go over some notes and share a little. Normally it's coffee. Today I actually have pop. Ignore my nails. We're not gonna talk about that. We're not gonna talk about that at all. We're going to try and have some grace and keep it going. So today we're getting into how to improve reading comprehension by guessing from context. And basically the reading comprehension, these are just reading comprehension strategies that you can use during your next study session. And it's going to help you really elevate how you read. It's going to elevate how efficient your reading strategy is. And it's going to help you get really more bang for your buck as far as that goes. And because first of all, it's a late start today. We are getting started late. I usually like to do this in the morning, but I am more awake, so we'll see if that goes a little bit better. But also this is a sneak attack. So if you're coming in, if I am jumping right in, I'm sorry, but I will timestamp everything down in the description so that you can go back and forth and catch up on any parts that you missed. So now we grab a little bit of some refreshment and let's just get going. So reading a textbook is really hard, even if you are an avid reader. These texts are dry and dull. These texts are dry and dull, as university textbooks generally are, but it's more important that they convey information than entertain the reader. Because of this, reading comprehension is super important in college and university. Because reading your textbook can be so boring, it's essential that you get as much information out of it as possible the first time you read it. If you want to understand what you're reading from the start so you can move on to more exciting activities. Unfortunately, you're going to be reading a lot. This is probably something you will have to do every single day. University courses require a ton of reading because the textbook will explain things differently than the professor does. The professor won't have time to cover every concept several times in class. They often dedicate one class to a specific idea and then quickly move on. Your textbook, however, can be referenced anytime you are unsure of a topic or you need to review a process. This is why you end up reading so often. If I don't feel like doing something, I swear my attention span is cut into a quarter. After reading pages and pages, I catch myself and realize that I've forgotten everything that I just read. It's like I forgot to pay attention. I get super frustrated because I feel like I've wasted so much time, but sometimes I just can't help it. It's boring reading the same textbook over and over and over again for hours. When you add reading comprehension activities to your study sessions, you can be more engaged in what you're reading. This will make it more likely that you won't forget to pay attention. So you know that I already have reading strategies that I love to fall back on, and I have my 7-point reading strategy that I generally try and stick to when I am doing any reading for myself for school. So having these reading strategies planned out is really helpful, and this is one activity that you can add into that reading strategy in order to really make it a little bit more effective. I do have people who say, well, you tell me to make a reading strategy, but then what do I do? And this is one of the activities that you can do. And we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth here. So, and I will do a lot of these asides to elaborate a little bit more on what I'm trying to get at, maybe explain it a little bit better. And some people just get it, understand a little bit easier when you can have a conversation about the different things. These images are all on my Instagram as well. If you're looking at these carousels, if you ever want to save them and come back to them later. Rotating study activities helps you to find. Rotating study activities helps you to have fun during your revision sessions. They don't have to be dull and boring and repetitive. You can introduce new study activities and rotate through ones you like. Doing this will shake up each revision session so you don't feel like you're constantly doing the same thing over and over and over again. Stirring things up can help you build more mental associations to the information so you can retrieve it when you need it. It's like you're making a whole new network of cues that can lead you to focus. It's like you're making a whole new network of cues that lead to the focus you are studying. The more cues, the easier it is to find the information when you need it. And I do talk a lot about mental associations and memory cues, and that's just the whole web of knowledge that you can use, that you can rely on to help you retrieve the information you need when you're writing your exams or when you have to use the information that you've been studying all this time. The more mental associations, the more memory cues, that the thicker and more fortified that web that you're building to each concept, the easier it is for you to be able to retrieve and use the information that you study. You will be using your brain at a higher level of function than just reading. Not only will you be more engaged, but it will help you to remember better the first time. Each of these small tricks add up to better memory retention, which can be a huge help. So another thing that a lot of students find a little bit intimidating is when I call it reading comprehension, because a lot of people mistake reading comprehension for literacy, but they're actually quite different. So let's dive in really quick, really briefly, this is not long, into the difference between reading comprehension and literacy. Reading comprehension is different from literacy. Literacy refers to the ability to read, while reading comprehension refers to the ability to understand what you've read. All students know you can read a sentence and still not quite understand it. But the good news is that reading comprehension can always be improved. Small steps can be taken and added to your reading sessions that boost reading comprehension. These strategies will increase your ability to understand and synthesize the information as you read it. They also work double time, as they will also help you to remember the information better as you study it. There's a big jump in the technical reading skills from a high school reader to university textbooks. Some students may not have been prepared for this in high school, but this doesn't mean you have to struggle throughout university. Instead, you can practice these reading comprehension strategies to improve your understanding as you study. So now that we've noticed the difference, let's actually talk about why reading comprehension is important, and that really plays into how you can use it to study rather than just studying. You can use these strategies together in order to not only improve your reading comprehension as you are reading and as you are studying, but also, on the other hand, to retain the information better and do that double work where you're improving your comprehension and understanding it better at the first time you read it, and also improving your knowledge and understanding as a subject, so that you're doing two things at once. You're improving your reading comprehension and you're improving your knowledge and understanding of the topic that you are studying. So reading comprehension is the ability to understand and synthesize information the first time you read it. This means that you can understand what you're reading better and relate it to concepts you already know. This helps you both learn a new topic more efficiently and recognize how it builds upon foundational themes. This will evaluate. I was about to say evaluate because, of course, I was. This will elevate your understanding by working with the topic and understanding how it functions more effectively. For example, the ability to guess the meaning of a word using its context is directly related to grammatical knowledge. When you try to use problem solving to guess a word's meaning, you directly assess the grammar and structure of the surrounding words and sentences to gather clues to the word's meaning. This will help you with both reading comprehension, grammatical structure, and overall literacy. Using reading comprehension strategies like guessing from context keeps your brain alert and engaged. Your brain loves puzzles and problem solving. It helps your brain hone cognitive abilities and gives it something interesting to do. This means you will be more engaged in your readings and less likely to go on autopilot. Using context clues helps to increase your problem-solving skills. This will aid in critical thinking throughout your university career. You can translate this skill to many different areas in your life. Practicing this skill here in a controlled setting is a great way to exercise your problem-solving abilities. Taking these extra steps will also help you to synthesize information and reconcile it in old knowledge you've already learned. This will help you to fit concepts together, giving you a better understanding of how everything works. New concepts are built on top of old ones. They can relate when you can relate new teachings to the foundational theories they are built upon, you will understand them much easier. These extra steps will help you to make more connections and mental associations. This is like building an intricate web of clues to lead you to the location of where the information is stored. Sometimes when you're writing a test, you know that you've learned this information before, but you have trouble retrieving it. Creating as many links to the information as possible will help lead you to the information as you read it. So remember, when you are learning a topic, if you want to really make those memory cues and really be able to retrieve that information when it's time, there's a handful of ways to do it. The first one is to be able to memorize it, just brute force. You have to remember that one fact, but then also building that web of knowledge. And by building that web of knowledge, it's best to elaborate on it, learn more information about linking topics. So everything that it's foundational, everything that it's built upon, all of the underlying information and concepts that it's built upon. And then you learning more about it. How does it fit into other areas? How can it itself be built upon? What is it a foundational topic of? And then even some quirky or one-off facts can also really help to figure out or to help you to remember what these topics are. And because you're learning so much more, you're using this information, you're going over it over and over again, you're learning more about it, you're filling out its background rather than just trying to memorize this fact. It's going to really fill out all of the information around it and make so many more mental associations and memory cues for you to retrieve it. Because while you might forget this one fact when you're writing the test, you're sitting there and you're saying, I know something about this. As you continue on, you might remember and be able to retrieve one of those linking funny quick quirk about it, or funny foundational topic, or something funny about it. And then that's going to lead you backwards to the actual fact that you need to write down and elaborate on. So having all of this information in, around, and underneath the information that you have have to share, that you have to put out there, that you have to use, is really, really going to help with being able to retrieve all of this information at test time. And not only that, but answering questions in your homework, working with it in a lab, using it in real everyday life applications. So that's going to really help you be able to retrieve and rely upon the information when you need it. So now I'm actually going to talk about the strategy itself. How do you improve your reading comprehension by guessing from context? So how do you actually use and apply this particular study strategy? So let's dive in. One more sip. So reading comprehension can be improved by applying these strategies every time you read. You can implement these practices in both academic reading, like your textbook, or even just reading for pleasure. Whenever you come across a word you don't recognize, resist the urge to look it up. Instead, you can transform this into an effective learning activity. Take this opportunity to apply these problem-solving strategies to build mental associations. This will help you learn this new word more efficiently and more likely to be able to use it again in the proper context. These strategies are best used during the skimming or scanning phase of reading your textbook, although you can apply them at any time. But if you use it during the skimming method, you can then test your recall when you're ready to read the passage for real. This will allow you to reinforce your memory of the definition. So remember, when I often talk about the reading comprehension or the reading strategies, how I have, for myself, I have a 7-step reading strategy. So one of the steps is skimming through it. And that's when I just kind of quickly read over the passage that I'm about to, I look over the passage that I'm about to read. So I will try and keep my eye out for any new words. And that is especially words that are italicized and words that are bolded, and anything else that comes up that I don't immediately recognize. I will apply this reading strategy to it. So you can do this either while you're skimming, or if you're skimming, if you want to write down the word and the page number for each of these words that you come across, you can do it completely separately and then come back and look at those words when you're about to, between skimming and before reading the entire textbook. If you miss them and you are already on the reading phase, by all means, you can still do it, still implement this during the actual reading step of your reading comprehension strategy. So reading comprehension and vocabulary. Reading comprehension and vocabulary are intricately linked. The larger your vocabulary, the more words you know and can use easily, the higher your reading comprehension. The larger your vocabulary and the more words you know and can use easily, the higher your reading comprehension. You cannot separate one from the other. Reading comprehension is all about being able to understand what you're reading. If you don't recognize the word, you can't understand precisely what that sentence is trying to relay, resulting in a reduced understanding. By building your vocabulary, you will be much better able to understand what you are reading. New words that you don't understand or only slightly think you know are great learning opportunities. By applying problem-solving strategies, you can learn the definition of the word, how to use it in a sentence, and be more likely to remember the word in the future. Taking these steps is more effective than simply looking up the definition. That's because going through this process with intention will strengthen the placement of the meaning in your memory. Adding this word to your vocabulary and learning to understand it increases your understanding, resulting in better reading comprehension. Next time you come across this word, you will draw upon what you learned during using this strategy and understand it better. You'll also be able to use the word more naturally in a sentence next time you see it, next time you need to. So that's basically just saying you're always going to be able to retain information better if you can apply it, if you can use it, if you can actually do something with it in the studying context. So reading your notes, for example. If you have your notes and you're sitting down for a study session and you're just reading your notes for an hour, you're probably not going to walk away with very much information because you're not doing anything with the knowledge. If you, instead of just reading your notes, you decide, I am going to take this information and I'm going to turn it into a diagram. I'm going to take this information and I'm going to turn it into a chart. Now you're actually doing something with the information. You're applying problem-solving techniques. You're turning it into a visual cue. You're doing something. You're transforming the information from reading, from just words on a paper, to something else that you can tangibly interact with while you're doing it. So that's always going to help you retain that information just a little bit better. Because you are doing something with these words, you're going to have a stronger memory of them and a stronger memory of their definition. So it's going to help you to remember them better. So when you come across the word, what's the first thing you do? You skim through the passage for context. Skim over the paragraph that the word was found in. What is it trying to say? When you read the section, what would you assume the word means, even if you don't know its exact definition? Use the surrounding words to try and find clues as to what the word might mean. Can you get an impression from what the author has written? Write down your best guess for the word's meaning, or even other words that could stand in for it. Everything you can't think up, even if you can't think up a formal definition, it's okay to try and think of other words that might mean the same thing. You can also check out any diagrams or charts. Is the word depicted or used in a picture? If there is an entire process in the illustration that reflects the word, then study that diagram. Some words are going to be much more technical than others. Something like metabolism has many meanings in everyday use. It refers to a complex process where cells turn glucose into energy. Check out these charts and diagrams and pay special attention to what information they are relaying and see how much data you can gather from them. Do you understand what they are describing? Do they make any sense? Are you able to follow along and understand? Refer back to the paragraph now and see how many clues you can put together. So that is just looking around and seeking for clues from the context, from everything around it, to see if you can get some kind of information about what the word might mean. And writing the word down and really giving your initial impression of what the word means is important, because we want to have that unfiltered, that first naive look at what you think it means. And that's actually going to be used later on in this process. So don't skip out on writing down what you think it means. Still write that down. Don't just try and remember in your mind, because it's going to help you to really consolidate information better. So next, write down that word and isolate the prefix and the suffix. Many words are made up of combination of combinations of root words with a prefix and or suffix. If you can break apart a word into its fundamental components, you might be able to figure out what it's trying to say. The prefix of a word is the letter placed at the beginning of the word and can change the meaning. Let's use prefix as an example. The prefix of prefix is pre, which generally means before. The root word of prefix is fix, which means to attach. We're attaching a phrase before the original meaning of it. We are attaching a phrase before the original word to change its meaning. So now suffix is very much the opposite of a prefix. The suffix of a word is a letter or phrase placed at the end of the word that can change its meaning. So let's use comprehension, for example. So the root word of comprehension is comprehend, which means to understand. And the suffix ion or shun is a process or a result. So the word comprehension is the process of coming to understand something. So you can see how just changing the word is telling you, or just breaking down how a word is put together is going to tell you a lot about the word when you don't know it. And even when you do know the word, like how I explained prefix already and how we've been using comprehension this whole time, even when you break down words that you do know and you do use regularly, it's still helpful to really illuminate and understand what they are saying and open up that meaning. So when you break apart a word you don't understand, you can sometimes get an idea of what it means by examining the root along with that prefix or suffix. So when you look at that word that you found, the first thing you got to do is decide what the root word is. So try underlining what you think the root word is. And then you can isolate the prefix and or the suffix. So write out each piece of the word and what it means. Brainstorm what the word might mean based on these components. And then finally, compare the possibilities to the context. So now we have your original hypothesis based on context. And now we have your theory of the word based on breaking apart the root word with the prefix and the suffix. So now this process will get you thinking about the different meaning, about what the different meanings could be depending on the context. When you're trying to decide when you're trying to decide what meaning is most likely, use the common sense rule. The common sense rule is, does it make sense given what the paragraph is saying? So go back and compare the context with the word that you broke apart with the prefix and the suffix. And now give me another theory of what you think that word might be. The third step is to ask who, what, when, where, and why. So ask the 5 W's every time you come across a word that you don't understand. These questions are always helpful, and any good problem-solving strategy will incorporate this tactic. See if these questions can change your opinion of the answers you came up with in the last exercise. They will also help you to deepen your understanding of the material you're reading. It might sound silly, and of course, not all of the W's will apply every single time, but you might be surprised with some of the questions you meet once you actually go through the trouble of phrasing them. So what is comprehension? That one fits. Who is comprehension? No, that one doesn't really fit. I guess you could argue who needs comprehension, but it doesn't always fit. So you could pass who. When is comprehension? That one fits. How is comprehension? That's what we're talking about right now. Why is comprehension important? There we go. See, you're applying these W's. And so some of them are going to fit, some of them won't. So now we've got the original hypothesis of the word that we wrote based on the context. We broke down the prefix and the suffix, and now we've applied the 5 W's. So now go through your original hypothesis and now make another theory and write out your assumptions. Write out all of the different meanings you think the word can have. As you work through each of these steps, it will be easier to track and eliminate your guesses when you're writing them down. This way, you can better track what you think the word can still mean and what you've rejected. You also have to remember that writing is a really good way to help you retain information. Remember, I explained earlier that when you're doing something with the information, it's going to make it easier to remember it. Writing is doing something with the information. You're not just thinking it, you're not just reading it. Now you're actually having to use the motion of your hand to make language on a piece of paper. It's going to slow down the thought process because you can't write as fast as you can think. It's going to make you reflect on each word you choose. And that might all happen in a split second. But that process of turning your thoughts into words, words into movements, movements into writing, into letters on the paper, those steps are all going to help you with remembering and with working with this knowledge. So that's why I keep talking about writing out, writing by hand, and how that is so important, so helpful. So this will make So having all of these different hypotheses of what the word can mean will make for an interesting read once you actually look up the final definition. This will be fascinating to see if you had the correct meaning and decided against it. Then you can examine why you decided it was not a workable option. Both writing these definitions down and crossing them off creates more mental associations. Putting your thoughts into words is a lot tougher than you would expect. It's easy to have an idea in your mind, but if you can't put it into words and communicate it, you can't prove you understand it. That is what testing and assignments are based on, your ability to communicate concepts clearly. Writing these down and adding them to multiple choice questions in your practice tests is also a great strategy. It will ensure that you commit the true meaning to memory and not your previous assumptions. So you can definitely, if you have 3 or 4 theories of what this word can be, definitely write them out, and then you can turn those into practice exam questions or flashcard questions later when you are practicing your vocabulary. If you thought it meant one thing or all of these other things and it didn't, throw that in there so you can remember, so you're reminded that it doesn't mean those things, and kind of reinforce the proper theory, the proper definition, once you make flashcards or practice exams out of them. So now finally, it's time to look up the definition. It's finally time to look up the definition in the glossary or in the dictionary. Once you do, compare it to all the different assumptions you've made in the earlier exercises. How close were you? Were there subtle differences in what you thought it meant and what it actually means? Write down the definition and list the similarities and differences between what you thought and the actual meaning. Next, search online for more variations of the definition. Compare your wording in the textbook. Compare their wording to your textbook. Were they more clear or easier to understand? Write them down too if you find them useful. Now, we're not done there, because there is still more you can do with this activity in order to make it even more efficient. And the first thing is to write and rephrase the definition in your own words. Rewrite the definition in your own words. This is a powerful technique to help you better remember the meaning of the word. It's much more challenging to remember someone else's words than it is to remember your own. Rephrasing it into your own words will help you to do this. This allows you to use words that are common to you in your vocabulary, making them easier to remember. Start by changing the words individually, especially long or technical terms. Next, change the sentence to make it flow more fluently. Third, keep editing the definition until it's in simple words, easy to understand, and you're happy with it. Write this definition in your notes so you will be able to review it for your future study session. So there is a rule where they're saying that you don't really understand a concept. You don't really understand a theory, a hypothesis, a topic until you can break it down and explain it to a kindergartner in a way that they would understand. And so that's what you're doing in this exercise, is that you are rephrasing this definition into something that you understand. And then once you understand it, once you've dissected it and taken it all apart and done this, you'll be able to then explain it to other people because you've done the work to really learn this word. And also, a lot of times the definition itself is short and sweet and very technical. And if that's not how you speak, if that's not how you think, it's going to be really hard for your brain and your memory to reconcile it. And you're just going to be spitting out this definition over and over and over again through brute memorization force. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to memorize it because it's more important that you understand it than that you memorize it. So now take that definition that you've been working so hard with and compare it to the actual definition. So now how does your reworded definition compare to what you initially thought the word meant? Write down, were you very far off? And how was it similar or different? Write these down so you can see the journey you've made in your understanding of this term. So you might find that now that you have gotten the formal definition, dissected it, and written it out as your definition, it might actually be much closer to your original hypothesis, to that very first definition or one of the very first theories that you wrote down. And so this is saying, how far were you off? And where in your thought process did it change, or were you actually really close once you've actually put it in regular words, which is probably what your original hypothesis was in. It probably wasn't in super technical terms. Next, brainstorm some synonyms. Synonyms are words that have the same or very similar meanings to the ones that you're studying. Think of some other words or short phrases that might mean the same thing and write them down. This gives you more words and a more extensive vocabulary to pull from, further increasing your reading comprehension. So there's going to be times when you want to explain it, but you won't want to use the same word, which is usually how definitions work. You can't use the word you're defining in the definition, or you can't always use the word that you are trying to explain in the explanation. So having other words that you can use, or having other similar words that mean the similar meanings or that mean the same thing, can help you to pull upon those words when you are trying to explain or define or use this in an assignment or in homework. It also helps you if you cannot think of the definition. There's lots of times where somebody might say to you, I don't understand that word. What does that word mean? And you might not be able to give the definition of comprehension, for example. You might not be able to give the exact definition of the word comprehension, but you can say, oh, it means like it's understanding. It's like getting it. Like, do you get it when you're reading? So it's a way of defining things without having a formal definition by explaining a synonym as well. Next, try to think up some antonyms. So there are going to be words that this works for, and there are going to be words that it doesn't. So if this is a technical term like a piece of the anatomy, everything until now works, but antonyms might not. So if this works, you can, just like the who, why, what, when, where, how questions, the 5 W's. If this applies,